Milford. I'm Melissa Sheketoff, WICC News.
It's time. Time for stimulating talk. Time for thought-provoking conversation. Time for the Lisa Wexler Show. Turn on your brain and get the real scoop on today's topics and events. Here is Lisa Wexler.
Hola, bola. Wow, do we have a great show for you today. Let me tell you the lineup of the guests. We have Jeff Warshaw, who's coming in. Here he is. He's coming in studio. Maybe he'll sit with me for the first part of the show, and he's joining us at 10:15 officially. He is the big, what we call the Ganzamacher. Come on in, Ganzamacher. He's the big maven. He is the guy that is Connoisseur Media, so he'll be on with us in just a few minutes. Mark Shanahan, who is the new executive director of the Westport Country Playhouse, will be joining us at 11:15. We may hear from Representative Jonathan Steinberg at 10:30 about his meeting with the governor yesterday regarding utility rates. And at 11:30, the doctor is in. We're going to hear from one of the premier OBGYN gynecologist, oncologist surgeons. Her name is Dr. Gazelka David West. We'll answer your questions about ovarian issues, ovarian cancer issues, all kind of ugly things that women sometimes have to face from a premier surgeon with Northwell. 203-333-9422. Listen, I want to begin with the trial that we're following very closely, and that has to do with whether or not a receiver should be appointed for Success Village. Just a very, very quick recap. Success Village straddles Bridgeport, Stratford. It's 900-unit co-op. It is mostly middle-income people and lower-income people. It was built in the 1940s, and they haven't had heat and hot water consistently. They also say that a receiver needs to be appointed to collect all the common charges because they don't know where the money is going. They're not the only people saying that. So are the municipalities of Stratford and Bridgeport, because the co-op village is hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for taxes. And also the utilities, UI is coming in and saying, excuse me, you're not even paying our utility bills. And the people there are very alarmed because a prior judge had ordered a new board meeting to presumably elect a new leadership for the co-op board. That meeting never happened. They flouted the judge's orders. It never happened. So in the meantime, Bridgeport and Stratford decided to dig into their pockets and hire attorneys to go into court and demand a receiver. Now, what is a receiver? I'll put my lawyer Lisa hat on. A receiver is literally somebody who receives money. That is what a receiver is. A receiver is an independent person appointed by a judge who reports to a judge about money. And so what they want in this case is somebody to receive the common charges so that they'll be accountable for how they're spent. But the co-op is strenuously objecting. They decided that they wanted to spend co-op funds instead to hire a lobbyist. And they hired the former Speaker of the House, Jim Ammon, to be their lobbyist. Presumably what? To change the law to enable them to manage the co-op better? I have no idea. But in the meantime, Terry, who calls in pretty frequently from Success Village, just called in yesterday to say she still has no hot water, and she hasn't had hot water for 5 days. And that means she literally has to beg and borrow to get a hot shower someplace. It means that when she wants to make a cup of coffee, she can't. It means all of it. And it's really bad, and it's unsanitary, and she feels she might have gotten a UTI as a result. She's very unhappy. She's not the only one. So I want to report to you that the trial began yesterday in court. Judge Dale Radcliffe is presiding. The attorneys for the co-op argued that he should recuse himself, that he should basically step aside and not be the judge, because they argued that his wife, Carmela Lopez, a former judge, is friendly with Maria Pereira. Maria Pereira is a public official. There's virtually nobody in Bridgeport who doesn't know her or know her name. And Dale Radcliffe said, I'm not leaving the case because of these frivolous allegations. Forget about it. And he dismissed their motion to recuse, and he moved on with the case. So according to Daniel Tepfer of the Connecticut Post, a series of witnesses already began testifying. They will also resume testimony today. But the first witnesses that came on testified that the management did not respond to repeated notices of health and fire code violations. Maureen Whelan, the environmental health supervisor for the town of Stratford, said that even which was in violation of health codes, and she issued orders that it be fixed. And she said nothing happens when she issues orders. Nothing happens. They don't fix it. That the problems continue to persist. Let's see. Lawyers for the city of Bridgeport, the town of Stratford, United Illuminating, and Southern Connecticut Gas Company all appearing in court in order to argue. That was led by an attorney, Berturla, who argued most strenuously on behalf of the people who want the receivership. Stratford Deputy Fire Marshal Marshal Bernard McGordy was the sixth witness called by Berturla. He said he inspected the Stratford side of the complex and found 71 fire code violations. He said people go to sleep, they see the smoke detector, they feel they're going to be safe, but there's no guarantee the detectors are going to work. He said there were improper fire doors, non-working fire detectors, and non-working smoke detectors. He said this is 3 years of issues and it's unacceptable. He tries to work with the co-op's management, but not everything has been fixed. And Bridgeport Health Director Elizabeth Rivera Rodriguez, who was the 11th and final witness of the day, said the city of Bridgeport continues to get complaints from the co-op that the units don't have hot water. Dennis Bradley is appearing for Darrell Crossland, who is in the Dominican Republic apparently and can't get back. And Bradley challenged the Bridgeport Health Director, claiming that a temporary boiler is serving the community now. And she said, you know what? We're still getting complaints. Who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe you asserting that everything works? Or am I going to believe the people who are actually calling us and saying they don't have heat or hot water? I'm going to tell you that I believe Terry. Okay? Terry calls us. She lets us know. She's a regular caller to the show. She cares about, what's happening in her community and elsewhere. I think she's a reliable person. She's lived there for decades. And when she says she doesn't have heat or hot water, I believe her. 203-333-9422. And speaking of all of that with utilities and electric rate relief, it doesn't look like they're going to call a special session, which would be a one-day approach. Governor Lamont believes that that is too much of a Band-Aid and that the problems that people are responding to are longer term in nature and require a longer term solution. So he is not inclined to go ahead with a special session, but it does look like this electric rate relief issue has become the political football of this fall season in terms of Republicans lining up to say that you and I as consumers are spending too much money. Some Democrats agreeing and sort of not knowing how to handle this, it seems to me, as an election issue. And the reality is that we're going to be in for an expensive winter and following summer because we are spreading it out now over the next 9 months, including this very big public benefit utility bump in our electric bills. And if we have, an unseasonably cold winter, which who knows if we ever have anymore, I don't know. With global warming, who knows? When's the last time we've had an unseasonably cold winter? But it doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be that cold for us to need some heat. So it's going to be an expensive winter because Pura turned down the request by Jonathan Steinberg and Norm Needleman, who are leading the Energy and Technology Commission. They turned down the request to reconsider their decision by a 2-1 with Marissa Gillette dissenting, and she's the chair. All right, we're going to be right back. That's just a little bit of the headlines and the getting you back up to speed on what's happening in some big Connecticut stories. But we're going to be joined by Jeff Warshaw, who is the owner of Connoisseur Media, which owns WICC, the voice of Connecticut, here at 600 AM, 95.9 FM. And we're going to find out a little bit what makes him tick. So stick around, 203-333-9422, and we'll be right back.
The voice of Connecticut, WICC, now on 95.9 FM. The all-new WICC 600 and 95.9, your only source for local news and talk in Fairfield County. Listen on 600 AM and 95.9 FM or online at voiceofct.com. The voice of Connecticut, WICC 600 and 95.9.
Catch up with me, Lisa Wexler, by becoming a patron of the show. For only $6 a month, we give you bonus content, including behind-the-scenes photos, emails, and even a chance to sit in the studio with us to hear the show live. Become an insider and join our award-winning team.
Sono Collision, Fairfield County's best for top-quality collision repairs. We deliver unmatched precision and care to restore your vehicle. Trust us for excellence. Visit sonocollision.com or call 203-939-9955.
WICC 600 AM and 107.3 FM has your traffic covered. Listen weekdays for the most up-to-date traffic reports brought to you by Smart MLS. There's a smarter way to sell your home.
Where Connecticut comes to get informed. The Lisa Wexler Show on the voice of Connecticut, WICC 600 and 95.9.
And welcome back to the show. I'm so delighted. Listen, I ran into Jeff Warshaw, our next guest, and Stu Leonard's. And when I found out he was going to be on Melissa Sheketoff's show, I said, what do you mean? You're willing to go on the air and talk about everything? He goes, Lisa, I would never say no to you. So here you are today, Jeff. Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for all of this. Thank you. I mean, we know that decisions are made at the top. You're the top, and you've made the decision to keep investing into the people and the technology behind News Talk Radio in Connecticut via WICC?
Well, thank you for all the kind words. Of course, Kristen.
Oh, Kristen's
Okeson,
amazing.
and
Kristen
she's
Okeson. Woo!
I consider her the top. I mean, I think she's the one that really has been a great catalyst for this. And
She's
Keith,
amazing.
and also the people of Fairfield County, because we've had such nice success with WICC that it merited us making a bigger commitment and investing more, because we feel like Fairfield County is a really great and important place, and there should be a News Talk station that's dedicated to Fairfield County that covers the entire market. And
Absolutely. And the FM is such a nice place because it's a different footprint and maybe a different demo, maybe a different audience.
Right. So across the country, the top AM brands, many of them have migrated over to FM. In New York.
But they're not leaving AM. They're on both.
No, that's right. WFAN is on both. WINS is on both. In Washington, the number one building radio station in America is WTOP. It's owned by a good friend of mine. And they were always very successful, but they became much more successful when they put it on the FM dial as well.
It's exciting. Yeah. I was listening to my voice yesterday, naturally. And it sounded good on FM, on a repeat, because we're repeating ourselves at night, which is really cool, too. So, Jeff, you've always loved radio. You started in college. So did I, by the way. You started at Penn. I started at Hopkins. Why do you love radio so much?
I love radio because it's the original social media. It's the original place where people could go for companionship and could go to find out what's going on in their communities, for entertainment and for company. And it's been really, at this point, the most important way for people to communicate on a local basis what's going on in their communities.
The 291 people listened to radio as part of their day last year in 2023. And we only have, 330 million people in America? 291 million people are listening to Silter Radio every day. And it's funny because people, radio, like young people, radio, but they don't realize a lot of what they're imbibing is still coming from the radio.
When I have a couple of important roles in the industry, including being the head of the Radio Advertising Bureau. And we're very, very focused on disseminating the information about what radio really is versus what the perception is. And people that actually make a living in the radio business wildly underestimate how much more dominant it is than other audio media. It's incredible. Things like people say, satellite radio has got to be equal to radio, and radio is 15 times bigger. People consume, I think that there's a statistic that for ad-supported media, radio gets something like 78% of the listening. And has been consistent, and in the car it's even higher. So people don't really necessarily always understand how important radio is, how important the reach is, and also how important it is for local advertisers to be able to
reach people,
and to improve their businesses.
Yeah.
And radio is great for getting results for the clients, and it's also really important for our listeners to be able to tune in to something when something is going on in their community. It's not like Spotify is going to tell you when there's a power outage. Well, of course, if there was a power outage, you couldn't listen to Spotify.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And so we feel that it's not only good business, but it's also really important as being important parts of our community. And I happen to live here in Fairfield County.
You're my constituent,
right?
Jeff.
And so
you should never need me.
I feel extremely fortunate that I live in a community that I happen to own the radio stations.
That's pretty cool.
That are so fantastic.
Yeah.
And they haven't abandoned their responsibility and their kind of not only responsibility as broadcasters, but to the listeners. Have not just become automated and just commoditized. That we are.
No.
We take it very seriously.
We do.
And it's much more rewarding financially, but also kind of it's more fun to have great radio stations in my backyard.
We're chatting with Jeff Warshaw, who is the leader, the owner of Connoisseur Media. And Connoisseur Media is WEB, it's WPLR, right? It's Star, and it's WICC.
That's right.
Right?
In Fairfield County.
In Fairfield County.
Mm-hmm. And we also
you have other
we also
properties.
operate WIBC.
And WIBC, I love one.
Right.
Yeah. WIBC. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a pretty cool cluster. We're all right here.
Right, and you can actually hear some of our Long Island radio stations. I think I can.
Well, you can hear WICC on Long Island.
Right,
I know
and
I
you
have
can
Long
hear
Island callers.
Walk FM.
Yeah.
And K-Joy and the Shark and now the Wolf, and from out of Long Island, you can hear it, certainly across the water.
Yeah,
in
it's
Fairfield
fun.
County. Yeah,
It's and it's an umbilical cord with New York City being like in that triangle right there.
that's
Yeah,
right. And we believe that being vital parts of our community is what our raison d'etre is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're chatting with Jeff Warshaw. So Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot about something. I've had this idea. I figured, listen, how often do I get your complete undivided attention? I've had this idea, which, by the way, I already pitched to Kristen and she loved it. So you're in good, safe territory. But, Melissa and I and Paul, but really Melissa and I, in terms of a lot of interviews, throughout the course of the year, we interview people that have made an enormous positive impact on our community. And I wanted Connoisseur Media to start something called the Inspire Awards, where once a year we honor some of the people in our community that do extraordinary things. What do you think about that?
I think it's an inspiring idea.
You like that, right? It's right in keeping with what you talk about when you talk to us at Connoisseur privately, right? It's in keeping with your motivation to bring good into the community and to recognize good in the community. Because we have a lot of hometown heroes. We have people doing extraordinary things. And we get to know them for like 20, 30 minutes and we put a podcast on and then we say goodbye. I just thought it would be really nice if once a year we made a big thing of it.
And you can start by finding some great local advertisers to underwrite.
Oh, there it is. See, that's the other part of the job. Right. Okay. I have to start by finding a salesperson to find those people. That's what I have to do.
No one's a better salesperson than you. Come on. You could do it yourself.
Good. Yeah. What 10 minutes of the day am I going to find? Because right after this, I start hearings at 1 o'clock.
Well, around the same 10 minutes as the other people in this building have.
Yeah, I know.
Kristen would just love, she's looking for things.
I know.
She has nothing else to do.
I know. But I like the idea.
Yeah, I think it is a great idea. And I'm not to be cynical about it. I think we can all find time to honor the
You know
people
what I
that
mean?
make a difference.
Yeah. Because a lot of the messaging that comes to us at Connoisseur is about the big picture. It isn't just about what we're doing in the studio for 2 hours or 4 hours. It's really about community out there. And Weeby is going to be at the Oyster Festival this weekend, and we make it so that our stations are everywhere. Like we're present.
We have so many events that we do and so many causes that we support as a company. And so maybe to have a kind of one banner event might be a really great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to just be WICC. It can be all of us. What's been the most fun thing about owning radio stations?
I think attending the events, when I get to see our listeners and our clients, like, last week we had at Little Pub in Fairfield, we had great, artists. We had
we
Papa
do those.
Roach,
Yeah,
and the listeners came out, and the artists had really tremendous kind of meaningful things to discuss about mental health and suicide. And we had a lot of listeners that was a particularly important topic to them. It was very moving, and just to see our radio station be able to be a venue for such great entertainment, and also for something that mattered to so many people. Like, those type of events are really fantastic. I think it's a great benefit to Fairfield County that we continue to do those type of events, and anyone that's not been to one of those acoustic sessions, I think they're really missing out.
What are they called?
Acoustic sessions.
Acoustic sessions. That's right, where people hear real music.
Over the years, we've had artists like Train and Rob Thomas, and really some great artists, and they're all very anxious to interact with our listeners and take pictures and chat with them. It's really an amazing thing.
So we're chatting with Jeff Warshaw. Jeff, what do you think the role is? We are News Talk here, and we try and be a combination of news with some opinion. Do you think that there's still a role for that on the air in terms of the opinion piece? What do you think about that? And what is your sort of editorial take in terms of, you're an owner of a radio station? Do you feel that that we as hosts should be allowed to say what we want to say? I'm curious about your sort of general attitude about that.
Well, definitely opinions are, that if you don't have opinions and you don't have a point of view, then you're not that interesting, right?
Okay.
So All the opinions that are great, I'd love to hear them as long as they agree with me.
You and everybody
right.
else.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I can count on one hand the times over my entire career that I've ever felt any desire to say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't heard that on the air." So I don't, occasionally I feel like I want to call in as a listener and say I don't agree. But I think, of course, we should be we should be a place that it's a free exchange of ideas. I also don't love being a voice to promote division. Like I'm not really interested in having our company have an editorial standpoint, and I really don't want. I think this is a place for people to come together, and not a place for there to be kind of politics that divide and cause rancor in our community. That's personally not my what I'd like to see. But I also don't take much of an editorial role. But in general, I think obviously hearing opinions is important and being able to exchange
Ideas. Yeah.
But I also don't want our radio stations to become like a venue for any single political point of view.
Yeah. I think that's smart. And I honestly think that that's a reflection of what most people, at least in Fairfield County, agree with. That's my sense. That ever since I've been on the air in 2006, I've always thought, let me be a sieve, right? Let me have opinions sort of come through me so that I can fairly explain what somebody else is thinking about and saying about, but not tell people what to think. I don't ever tell people what to think.
We had the gubernatorial debates here, and I met and spoke to both sides, and certainly I have a strong belief that both sides should be able to be heard. In fact, that's kind of what I mean by saying that we shouldn't have a corporate editorial perspective. I don't want to become a Fox News or even an MSNBC where only a certain group of people feel like it's safe for them to listen and not feel like they're going to be angry all day long.
Oh, that's good, because that's I think we're trying to do that here on WICC. I really do. I know Melissa and I and Paul, we're really trying to do that. We try not to tell people what to think, but rather to expose people to a wide array of points of view and then hear their points of view, because it's really fun talk radio.
Right. I was listening to the radio the other day, and and the host was talking about how Donald Trump does so many interviews and Kamala Harris doesn't. So the counter to that is, yes, it would be nice if Kamala did more interviews, but doing interviews where you lie all the time, right, is not really any better than doing no interviews, right? So if you're going to, I don't mind saying, look how great Trump is for doing all these interviews. But from my perspective, that's only one side. The other side is, well, it would also be great if people would be accountable for when they're giving interviews for telling the truth, and not just being a place where they could say things and not be checked on them. So that would be my perspective on what our role would be if we're going to present one point of view, we should make sure that we're honest about it.
Yeah, I agree. And we try and dig deep. We do. And to that end, it would be very nice in general if all politicians were both candid and accessible. How great would that be? That would be amazing.
I mean, candid and accessible and honest.
Honest. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's, obviously a work in progress with America. I think we've stepped back. We got to go forward again with that.
Right. And I think that most people would care less about the whether or not someone is a Democrat or Republican, and more about somebody that that they could feel good about.
Yeah, that they feel they could trust.
I mean, there are, of course, people on both ends that will never feel good about the other's perspective, but I think the vast majority of people just want something normal.
Oh, and on that note, Jeff Warshaw, thank you very much, because WICC is a very cool, normal place to be.
Right.
The staff is normal. The vibe is great. And I'm a big believer, and I know this to be true, because you're now the fourth radio station that I've worked at, and this is by far the best, and I'm not just saying this to you because I never just say anything to anybody. I know it comes from the top.
Well, thank you
It
very much.
always comes
Well,
from
we're
the
proud
top.
to have you as a big part of that. And I'm, of course, happy to come back anytime.
Jeff Warshaw from Connoisseur Media, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to be right back with Jonathan Steinberg, who'll be joining us in just a moment to give us the recap on what's happening with utility rates. Stay tuned.
The Lisa Wexler Show will return on WICC 600 AM and 107.3 FM. Get the best parts of the show on your favorite podcast app.
Discover iRuse, your trusted divorce community, helping parents who are contemplating divorce or are separated to reduce your emotional pain and cut your legal costs. If you're looking for support, guidance, or direction, take these next 2 steps. Take our free self-assessment and then schedule your call with a divorce specialist who will craft a tailor-made action plan, including which divorce-trained professional can best help you. Get started at irooze.com. IROOZE rhymes with schmooze, and leave a strong divorce legacy behind to your children.
This is your Optimum Weather Update. Today should be a beauty of a day, mostly sunny with highs in the upper 70s and low 80s, lows dip down into the mid 50s. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and clouds, highs in the mid to upper 70s with lows dropping again into the mid 50s. This report powered by Optimum Business. Get fast, secure internet for your business with 99.9% network reliability. Call 855-2-OPTIMUM or visit optimum.com/business today.
Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. You can always find people who are helping. Thank you to all the first responders who put their lives in danger to help us when my brothers and sisters and mom and dad and grandpa and grandma need them.
Thank you, first responders.
This is what I signed up for as a first responder. I am constantly worried about being exposed to this virus and potentially bringing it back to my home and my family. I'm going to continue going to work day in and day out and providing help to those that need it.
We look out for the helpers because they look out for us. Thank you, first responders. Thank you, first responders. Thank you, first responders. Love you. Mwah.
Be safe, look after yourself, and look after one another. Thanks.
Learn how you can help first responders in your community by texting BRAVE to 24365.
These are real stories of speech-language pathologists and the people they helped. He was in his 30s.
55 and far from home.
15 years old with multiple disabilities.
It was a traumatic brain injury.
He's bilingual but lost his English after the stroke.
Several surgeries led to his swallowing disorder.
His goal was to get back to work.
I used French during therapy.
Others almost gave up on the goal of him eating.
Oh, he was dedicated.
Together, we built his life back.
Social interaction was the key to helping him.
And he made it back to work.
When he ate, his friends cheered.
Everyone has the right to communicate.
And later, he was able to travel across the world to his family.
Are you or someone you know experiencing a speech, language, or swallowing disorder? An ASHA-certified speech-language pathologist can help. Visit us at asha.org/public.
The Lisa Wexler Show is back, and only on the voice of Connecticut. WICC 600 and 95.9.
And welcome back to the show. 203-333-9422 is our number. You can call me at 203-333-9422. I want to let you know that in the next hour, the doctor will be in, and this particular doctor is an OBGYN who specializes in gynecological cancers. May not be a conversation that you say, ooh, you know, makes for a happy day, but the truth is that many, many women, millions of women, end up having uterine or ovarian or breast cancers, and we probably know some of those women if we aren't them ourselves. And the woman that we're interviewing from Northwell is one of the chiefs of surgery there. She's got a tremendous amount of credentials and a great reputation. And we're going to answer your questions about this. And, you know, these are insidious cancers. And I personally believe that women's health is a conversation that we ought to be having very often. So we have it here. 203-333-9422. Also coming on in the next hour, Mark Shanahan, who's the executive director of the Westport Country Playhouse. And he's got some very exciting things he wants to tell us about. All right. So, what else do I want to tell you? Did you see the story? I got sent this story from a bunch of people My Melissa. I have to call you My Melissa because otherwise people think it's just generally Melissa. So My Melissa is Melissa Chessman, and she sent me the story in show prep. But Melissa, I also got this from a bunch of other people because people want me to know, because I am a judge myself, that somebody was arrested for threatening a judge in Norwalk. And that's not a good thing. So apparently this guy made the kind of threats that were specific and serious enough that the police took it seriously. And the truth is that threatening judges has been on the rise, but not merely threatening them, actually going ahead and implementing the threat has also been on the rise. And it's a very, very chilling, disturbing, horrible thing because if we can't be safe as judges, and I say we because I happen to be one as well. I'm the probate judge of Westport and Weston. How are we going to get good people of integrity and reputation to stand up and make these hard decisions, and they are hard decisions, if their own personal safety is at risk? A Connecticut man faces charges for allegedly threatening to assassinate a judge who had signed a warrant for his arrest. His name is Nicholas Supple, 48 years old, of Norwalk. He was arrested Saturday on charges of second-degree threatening and second-degree breach of peace, according to Connecticut State Police, after a judicial call center in Hartford was contacted on Friday in the afternoon hours by a, quote, disgruntled man who was looking to obtain body camera and motor vehicle footage from his recent arrest. And according to this, during the call, he literally said, "I am going to assassinate the judge that signed my warrant." I had a man not too long ago who called up my clerk and said, "I'm going to put a bullet in Judge Wexler's head." That had never happened to me before. I've been a judge almost 11 years. Listening to us now is Jonathan Steimer. I'm going to bring him into the conversation. He's our state rep in Westport. Jonathan, that really happened to me. Somebody called recently, about 3 months ago, said they were going to put a bullet into my head. I subsequently traced the call, found out that he was in a psych ward in Massachusetts, made the report to our local police. Our own police chief, Fody, took it very seriously, and our local police department swore out a warrant for his arrest, but he then disappeared. He was released from the psych ward, and he hasn't been seen since. So there is somebody on the loose who made a really damaging threat to me, but the truth is I hope that because he was psychiatrically unstable, that it's not something I have to take terribly seriously. But, you know, Fody told me, Jonathan, that I need to be situationally aware at all times. And I now have little gadgets in my purse, and I have Ring around my house, which I never wanted to have surveillance. And I put certain things in as a measure of security to sort of look around me because, I don't know, Sky, I don't know. And welcome to
You're
the
in
show,
the public
Jonathan.
sphere,
Hello.
Lisa.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Chief Fody is correct. I think you have to be self-aware at all times. It's very sad that our country, as we live in it today, you can be so easily threatened, that it's so becoming so commonplace and acceptable for people to threaten other people.
It's terrible. It's awful.
That's not America, in my view.
I know. And it really has a chilling impact on regular old people's willingness to serve in these positions. It really does. It makes them think twice about, is it really worth the aggravation? Because you know you're in public service. You're not doing it for the money. If you're not corrupt and you're an honest person, the last thing you're doing it for is for the money. You're doing it because you actually have a commitment to using your skills and talents to help the public. But, you know, if your own personal safety is at risk, some people will just not raise their hand. They just won't do it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories, and I hope we can tone down the rhetoric, which inspires some of these people who are on the edge to do crazy things. We abet these outcomes by intemperate speech.
Yeah, I think that's a very well put way to say it. And Jonathan, I asked you on the show today, thank you so much for coming. You are one of the chairs of the Energy and Technology Committee. I know that you and Senator Norm Needleman made an effort to ask PURA to reconsider these very high electric rate hikes that have been squeezed into 9 months left, 10 months. And but you were turned down by the same 2-to-1 voting that originally wanted to impose this schedule. Were you surprised at that outcome?
I was absolutely shocked. I did not conceive of the fact that the two commissioners, not Chair Gillette, who was on your show just recently, did an amazing job, but the other two commissioners were so hard-hearted and unthoughtful as to want to continue the pain on people rather than spreading it out as Chair Gillette wanted to do in the first place. Was very much surprised. Now, the one thing that they will quote is the fact that our bills are going down anyway because we're using less energy. It's a cooler day today, less AC. But that's not what we were talking about. We really wanted to be fair to, ratepayers. And that's why the governor called us in yesterday, along with the ranking members of the committee. We had met about 6-8 months ago, and he wanted to revisit things, given how much had changed in those past 6-8 months. A lot of the talk focused on, were there any leftover federal ARPA dollars? This is what the Republicans have been talking about, that we could apply to lessening the impact. They're going to look into it, but frankly, there may be some dollars that are not yet spent, but they're pretty much committed. They're part of agency budgets or program budgets. So, the frustration which came out of the meeting was there's precious little we can do that is going to have an immediate impact on ratepayers, other than they're using less energy and becoming more energy efficient, something that we emphasized quite a bit yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading, as a side note, I was reading I don't remember where I read it, but a big article about how solar power has been expanding at rates that no one would have expected 10, 20 years ago, and how that is still the best solution for the cheapest power for Americans. Solar. It's still
I think
the
we're
best
getting that way. The price keeps coming down and down. It's beginning to approach natural gas. Technology is advancing greater efficiency. We still have to deal with the intermittency issue, so we're going to need to build a lot of storage. But if you combine that with offshore wind, something else we talked about with the governor, they have sort of complementary peak periods. Wind is bigger in winter, whereas solar is bigger in summer. We can actually devise a strategy along with storage that we can add a lot of renewable energy, which we're going to need with all the demands on energy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're going to need less electricity. In a shift from fossil fuels to electricity, we're actually, ironically, going to need more power from the grid than we ever did before.
And I think environmentalists, and I consider myself a good environmentalist, need to be realistic here. We're going to be using natural gas for 10 years, 20 years, maybe 30 years, because our demand for energy is going to rise correspondingly. It's going to take some time before we can even contemplate replacing out fossil fuels. And I should also add, nuclear may be part of that answer as well, with the advent of small modular reactors. It's something that I'm seriously looking at. So, the governor has adopted what he calls the all of the above strategy for energy.
Yeah.
I'm a little hinky about being a fan of natural gas, but overall, I'm with him. We're going through a transition period that's going to be more than 20 years. And I'm afraid for ratepayers, there's not going to be a ton of relief on the price side. Going forward, Connecticut is already a very high cost of energy state, a high cost of doing business state. I know people don't want to hear that, but we're making the essential investments that are going to carry us forward. And that means that, we're going to all have to buckle up a little bit for the next number of years.
We're talking with State Representative Jonathan Steinberg, who represents Westport. Jonathan, I have a question to ask you. For the single-family homeowner, not the renter, who really doesn't have much to say about this, but for the single-family homeowner, what is the cheapest, best way to get solar energy on your roof right now? Is there a government subsidy program that you think we should know about? Should we just go to a private person who says, I can do this for you? What would you recommend?
Well, first of all, the state of Connecticut has an excellent webpage which talks about some of your options.
Okay.
And I think you make an interesting distinction here between purchasing solar panels, or what we call a power purchase agreement, which is effectively renting them out to a third party, and then you get the benefit on your bill. And PPAs are probably a more practical alternative for a lot of people who don't own their homes, don't have the right kind of facing to put on solar panels. We do have incentives, not what we used to, 15 years ago, for putting solar panels on your roof. But you can find all the programs on, I think, the Solarize Connecticut page on the Connecticut website.
Oh, that's good.
There are options out there. There are good players. There are also some bad players. Recently, a very large solar installer went out of business, a national player. So you have to do your homework. There are reviews that can be found. And not everybody's home is well suited for solar. So we'd like to see more what we call community solar, large solar arrays in which you can subscribe to the benefit that they derive. We don't have much of that in Connecticut, but we're working on it.
So, Jonathan Steinberg, one more question. I know that in 2017, the legislature had made this deal to subsidize Millstone. I've gotten feedback from listeners that are annoyed that New Hampshire crows that it gets the benefit of the Millstone power without having to pay for it. Connecticut decided, and it had a good reason, I'm sure, in 2017 for doing so. How much longer after these 9 months is the public benefit portion of our bill going to be so large? Does it go away after 9 months, or is it going to rejigger again because of Millstone?
No. Actually, yes and no. You raise a good point. In the short term, absolutely not. It's going to go back closer to where things were before. Is it possible that if there's a huge gyration in prices again, that there could be another payback for Millstone? Yes, that's possible. But we learned a few things there. First of all, we're never going to go it alone and do a contract as a state, though we felt it was the right decision at the time. We actually passed a law making that forbidding us doing something like that with other states' involvement. But equally importantly, if we were to owe the utilities for this contract again before it concludes in 2029, we would definitely put that into the bill earlier and spread it longer if we can. We'd make that legislative if we have to make sure that the impact on ratepayers is minimal.
Jonathan Steinberg, we've got a Peter from Bridgeport who wants to comment, ask you a question about solar. Peter, you're on the air with State Representative Jonathan Steinberg. Go ahead, please. What is your comment?
Hi, Jonathan. I had solar put on my house from a major company over a year ago. The panels are not turned on yet. They literally destroyed our roof, destroyed copper valleys, punctured them, and you can't patch those up.
Oh, no.
They said they would only pay for part of the roof with the legal system. I had attorneys involved, and they make people sign a legal release, which basically shuts them up.
Wow.
So when you do your reviews, you can't find bad reviews in my research. And I found out that...
Well, here's what I would tell you. Send me what you can. Send me an email, jonathan.steinberg@cga.ct.gov, and disclose what you feel legally comfortable. And we can look into this. When it's more than just one customer, if this is a pattern of behavior, there are many laws that come to apply to their operations. So this is not acceptable. And I would be glad to help in any way I can.
I've given up on legal counsel because they got nowhere, so I'm with the state of Connecticut now. I've already gone to that step and level.
Wow.
Good. But in my research, because people have no choice but to sign this legal release, which in essence shuts them up, when you do your research, it'll say online by the solar company, situation resolved, and that's because in order for the roof to get repaired by customers, they have to sign this legal release. And then we found out that the solar companies hire inexperienced roofers. They use a black tar on the roof, which is only a temporary fix because the sun cracks it and dries it up within 2 years. So your roof will leak again in a couple of years. All these things I've been uncovering as I've been trying to get my roof fixed.
Well, whatever you can disclose would be great. If you can even send me a copy of this disclosure form, I'd like to take this up with the Attorney General's office. This may be something that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, but Peter, even though you say you've already done it, you ought to listen to what Jonathan is telling you, because sometimes you as a consumer can get a lot of attention magnified if a state representative also brings it to the AG's attention. So I think you need to listen to I think you need to listen carefully to what Jonathan is telling you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because it's been now over a year that my roof's leaking all over the place.
Yeah.
I hired a roofing company to do temporary repairs, but the tarp has been ripping off now because it's been so hot and it's dried it up. It's blowing all over the neighborhood and so forth, the blue tarp in Black Rock.
Yeah, we want to encourage people to get solar, so it's really important for us to get rid of the bad actors.
Peter, why don't we do this?
So you've done us a service by pointing this out.
You have. So, Peter, why don't we do this? You leave your number with Justin, okay? Justin's going to take your number, and your email, please, if you have one, and I will make the connection offline and connect you to Jonathan, okay?
That would be wonderful if you could help, yes.
I would be delighted to do that. Thank you very much for calling, Peter, and I'm very sorry to hear about your roof. You know, it's like, Jonathan, it's like, what do they say? Like the good tensions, the law of good intent, unintended consequences, right? You know, you try and do the right thing, and then you get the unintended consequences. Nobody needs a leaky roof. That's the last thing we need. All right. Well, anyway, thank you very much, Jonathan Steinberg, for joining us today. Thank you for taking such a deep interest in all of this. And definitely keep in touch with us when does the session resume? After Election Day or before? When do you go back? January. And yet it's the long session this year, right? Is it the long session?
Correct.
Yeah. So it goes through June. Okay. January through June. All right. Well, try not to do too much harm, if you know what I'm saying, like the doctors when they take their oath. Their oath is to do no harm. So try not to do too much harm. Jonathan Steinberg, Westport representative on the Lisa Wexler Show. We will be right back.
The Lisa Wexler Show on WICC 600 AM and 107.3 FM. And whenever you want when you subscribe to Lisa's Daily Podcast.
We are always growing up, growing old, but are you growing in your job? Onboard USA is a family-owned company providing total workforce solutions to the majority of Fortune 1000 companies. Onboard USA wants to put their 44 years experience to work for you by finding you work that provides full-time opportunities, benefits, advancement, and a safe working environment. Onboard USA is looking for welders, pipe fitters, journeyman industrial electricians, and warehouse workers. Get on board and start growing. Visit onboardusa.com and click careers to get started.
Selling your home is a numbers game. The more potential buyers who see it, the greater the opportunity to sell. And when your home is listed on Smart MLS, more than 21,000 realtors see it, and so do all their buyers. Suddenly, the number of people looking at your home starts to grow by a lot. More realtors sharing your listing, more people seeing your home, more offers coming in, and maybe even more cash in your pocket. Smart move, right? Ask your realtor, is my house on Smart MLS? Smart MLS, the smart way to sell your home.
Back to the news and talk. Thanks to Smart MLS. Smart sellers ask, is my home on Smart MLS? The voice of Connecticut. WICC 695.9. It's the Lisa Wexler Show.
And we are indeed the voice of Connecticut here at 600 AM 95.9 FM. And I also want to let you know that you can now reach me via a web address, lisa@voiceofct.com. I'm delighted to take your emails. I really look forward to them, and I always get back to you. If you've ever written me and not heard back from me, that means I didn't get it. For whatever reason, aberrationally, I didn't get it, and the emails disappear after 30 days. So write me again. Okay, because even if I have nothing really that I can offer to the conversation, sometimes you just want to vent. I still would like to tell you thank you for venting to me and thank you for writing to me at voiceofct.com. Also, we spin off our interviews throughout the show as special podcasts, The Lisa Wexler Show, and occasionally we'll spin off a particularly potent monologue or a great conversation with callers. So keep an eye on the podcasts. I also do something called Behind the Wheel, in which I ruminate. I basically do a stream of consciousness about what is on my mind when I'm off the air. And some people want to know that, want to know what I'm thinking about. And I'm happy to have you do. And it's all free. It's all free. If you'd like to become a subscriber to the show, that's about $6 a month. I would love that. That will get you an invitation to our periodic Lunch with Lisa's. The next one is October 23rd. But also, then you get access to the entire show with the callers and the kibitzes and the mistakes and the bloopers and the in-betweens whenever you want. Your own appointment radio. And that's the benefit of becoming a patron of the show. We're going to have some more perks, hopefully, for patrons coming up in 2025. 203-333-9422 at 6 minutes before the hour. In the next hour, we're going to talk about women's health with a prominent OBGYN surgeon. And we'll also hear from Mark Shanahan from Westport Playhouse. Okay, we haven't discussed this story, and I could kick myself because it's already been 2 days. But in 2 hours, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I forgot to talk about this. We have to talk about this aid to the two governors of New York, and she and her husband, who were arrested for being Chinese spies. Okay, we have to talk about this. You can call me at 203-333-9422. What you need to know is, even though Kathy Hochul's getting all the blame, this was a leftover person from the Andrew Cuomo administration. He hired her. She was still there. She was good enough. I guess she didn't get fired. But it turned out all along she and her husband were taking bribes in order to get information, really important information, presumably, at the very, very top echelon of New York, to China. And in the New York Times, in a deep dive, the New York Post broke the story a couple of days ago, but the New York Times did a deep dive about this. Months after a low-level aide in the administration of Governor Cuomo returned from a visit to China in 2019, she got a curious inquiry from federal investigators where the FBI wanted to know about the nature of the trip that she had taken. Her name is Linda Sun, S-U-N, Chinese-American. In 2020, that was one of the first known instances in which our government took an interest in Ms. Sun's activities, but we didn't arrest her. We didn't have her fired. I don't know what we did. I don't know if we told Andrew Cuomo at the time or Kathy Hochul at the time. Who knows? But it took 3 years in February 2023 when Ms. Sun was interviewed by the state's Office of the Inspector General about her unauthorized procurement of official proclamations from the governor's office. What's that going about? In other words, governors make proclamations. I'll give you an example of one. You want to hear a great example of one? My grandma Helen, when she turned 106 in 2005. Anyway, she turned 106 in, was it 2005? Or was it 2004 that she turned 106? She was born in 1899. She lived in 3 centuries. Anyway, I miss my grandma. Anyway, could you imagine I was 45 years old when my grandma died? Was that lucky or what? Unbelievable. Anyway, but Jill was so excited when grandma turned 106. Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor at the time, that she called the mayor's office in New York. My grandma lived in Far Rockaway in the Jewish houses there on Beach 19th Street. And she had a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment. It was completely subsidized. You know what her income was? $317 a month from Social Security. That's the only income she had. But she was on Medicaid and she had AIDS. And believe me, the family made sure she was okay. She was great, more than okay. Anyway, but the Mayor Bloomberg, issued a proclamation in my grandma's honor. She did. As it was a scrolled thing. We had the family come. We did a hora around her in the main community room. We danced around her like an Israeli folk dance. We did a dance around her. We had music and celebration. And the mayor had this proclamation to honor the fact that he had a 106-year-old woman living in his city at the time. It's beautiful. Well, apparently Linda Sun didn't ask permission of anybody, and she was issuing these proclamations by the governor. And that's what finally got the interest of the law enforcement to look into what she was doing and why. She was apparently fired weeks after these unauthorized proclamations came to light. But it's only now in September of 2024 that now we, the public, know that although she was fired over a year ago, the truth is that she was a spy for the Chinese government. And at least that's the allegation. Now, she is defending it, and let's see what happens in a court of law. But the allegations are that she continued to use her positions in state government to benefit the People's Republic of China and its Communist Party in exchange for millions of dollars in benefits that she earned between 2020 and 2023, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn. They say they have a lot of confidence in their case. They brought in a 65-page indictment, query why it took so long, but they laid out a years-long scheme in which, among other things, Ms. Sun blocked Taiwanese officials from having any access to the governor's office. You listening to this? You see what China wanted to do here? They blocked Taiwan, which is our ally, from having any access to the New York governor's office. They eliminated references to Taiwan and the Uyghurs, which are the Muslim minority that are persecuted in China, from state communications. I'm going to have more on this. Wait until you hear these juicy details. Stick around. We've got news at the top of the hour. You're listening to WICC. I'm Lisa Wexler. Stay at your dial. We'll be right back.
WICC Bridgeport, WFOX Southport, WEBE HD2 Westport, WPLR HD2 New Haven, Fairfield University Graduate and Professional Studies Studio.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Steve Kathan. Court action in Washington going on now. New arguments in the federal election interference case against former President Trump. A narrower indictment was issued last week in the wake of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. CBS's Scott McFarland.
Donald Trump has entered formally not guilty pleas to those same 4 federal felony counts he faces for election subversion. It's the 4 counts from that superseding indictment that was filed last week by the special counsel. It has now been formally pled as a not guilty plea through his defense lawyers here today.
The day after a deadly high school shooting in Georgia, the mother of a student is filled with concern.
I'm scared to send him back. I don't know what to do. He's a senior. It's his last year. I don't want to pull him out and do homeschool, or I want him to experience his last year, but I'm terrified.
2 students and 2 teachers were killed in the attack. Authorities have charged a 14-year-old freshman at the school, someone who had been questioned earlier by authorities about threats. CBS's Dave